times I have casually mentioned the fact that I like to drink beer. This little song is more to the point. Roll out the barrel and lend me your...
Hey, welcome back to Barley and Hops. I'm George. Yeah, hey, this is a continuation. Now we're going to go through the anatomy of a keg. And hey, Robert, if you're still out there, you get another shout out, my friend. All the way out there in Lincoln, Nebraska. Semper Fi, buddy. Hang in there. Listen, I got John Palmer's book here, and I want to talk briefly just about a couple of topics, and one of them being priming and CO2 levels and carbonation in your beer, because it is a sorted topic, and a lot of people have a lot of questions about it. But you know, the different styles of beer have different levels of CO2, and they call those volumes. Take, for instance, a Stella Artois, you know, or a really good Pils, you know, with a big thick head, you know, and a lot of carbonation. Look at a Hefeweizen or a Crystal Weizen beer. And then you look at maybe a pale ale or a darker ale, and some of them don't have as much carbonation. It sort of begs the question, why? Well, different styles of beer call for different levels of CO2, and we can adjust those, and we can make sure that it's exactly what we're looking for. So if we want a really high level of CO2 for that crispness and a lot of bubbles and a lot of action, we can do that. Or we can go down the chain a little bit, and we can have those a little bit less level of CO2, so that we have that quenching beer that's as well refreshing, but it kind of lends itself to more of a full-bodied beer. Here are some levels. British ales, and I got this on page 113 from John Palmer's book. This is a nomograph. I'll try to scan it. If you want me to send it to you, I'll send you a copy of it. But it's really easy to use, and it's all based on temperature and the type of sugar you use, whether you use cane sugar or whether you use priming sugar, which would be corn sugar. I'm going to take this call just like it happens all the time. We'll be back with you in a moment. Where were we? We were talking about CO2 volumes. Okay, and so it all has to do with temperature and whether you're using corn sugar or, you know, dextrose or cane sugar. And you'll notice on here that there's, you know, the temperatures are on one side, then you've got the volumes of CO2 in the center, then you've got the ounces of what you use. And all you got to do is draw a line between what the temperature is and all the way over to how many ounces you use, and they'll tell you what volume of CO2. So for instance, if you started here at this temperature and you use that much sugar, you draw a straight line to intersect from here all the way up to here, and right where it intersected that line will tell you how many volumes of CO2 you have. So, and mine in particular, I'm doing it at 68 degrees, and I used 4.15 ounces of corn sugar. So that gives me about 2.6, 2.7 volumes of CO2. So that's available to you. Let me see, we got Belgian ales is 1.9 to 2.4. We got some really good German wheats are 3.3 to 4.5. So you see that there's a range in there that, you know, you can shoot for to try to, I guess, make your beer that much more exquisite. Good. Hey, and like I said, I did this one, and what I want to show you is if we, matter of fact, let me adjust the camera down so you can see what I'm doing here, and I'll show you what I'm going to do. Okay, this is my pin lock keg, because there are pin lock kegs, and they call them pin lock, and we're going to go through that in just a moment, and we're going to actually disassemble one of these, but it's because it has pins on the outside for your connectors to hook to, as opposed to a ball lock keg, and a ball lock keg has no pins. There's a ball, it's called a ball lock, because it has ball bearings in there, and we'll show you that as well. But now, the 2-pin is always the CO2 line, and the 3-pin is always the liquid line. So what I'll do is, and this one doesn't have a pressure relief valve, so the way you relieve the pressure is just by pushing in on the gas. And when I push in, you'll hear this. And if you heard that, and I'm sure you did, that was all the gas escaping. That was all the CO2 that's been developing inside this keg, because I put 4.15 ounces of sugar to 5 gallons of beer. So I've got CO2. My beer is now carbonated, and I just released the pressure. And as it sits in here, it'll continue to develop just a little bit more, but there's all that residual CO2 in there. That's how you can release that. Now, if I had a relief valve on the top, I would just pull it and it would go psh. What I'll do now is I'll just put this in the refrigerator and I'll hook up my CO2 line here. I'll hook up my liquid line on this side, and that goes to the tap. And then I'll turn the CO2 bottle on, 3 to 8 psi, that's the delivery. And I'll just deliver my beer. Okay, now let's get down to the basics of the anatomy of a keg. Okay, let's get down to the nitty-gritty. No. Okay, let's get down to the nitty-gritty of the anatomy of a keg, because you're going to be impressed on how simple they're designed and how easily they work. Now, oh, by the way, you know, we've got these beer koozies, and if you order something here and we send it to you from the store, I always throw in a couple of these. So yeah, please share these with others. And it says, "Do it George's way." And of course, it's got our Barley and Hops logo on it with our phone number. And I got them in several different colors, so I'll always throw a couple of them in a box. And the purpose of that "Do it George's way" is just a reminder that there are 1,000 ways of doing almost any of this, and there's not one particular way that's absolutely correct. So please be cautious and find a way. I'm just showing you how George does it. So this is George's way. That's what I have found that to me is the most simple, and it just kind of makes sense. And it works. All right, let's get back to these kegs. And you'll notice here, this is a pin lock keg. And this pin, you see it's got 2 pins on the side of it, and that's what that connector's for. That's why they call it a keg. Now, they're made by Firestone. You know, some of them are Pepsi. There's Diet Pepsi, then there's Coke. Of course, Coke and Diet Pepsi use 2 different containers. But homebrewers use both of them, and they both work exactly the same way. It's just the connectors on the top that make a difference. This one is the liquid line, and this one has 3 pins around the outside. And these 3 pins is what's used to hook the connector to the top of the keg. And then you've got this center portion. All you do is lift the handle, and that lid should fall in there, and it comes right out. So that lid has a rubber seal around it, and you just pull that rubber seal up, clean around there real good, pour some Star Sand on there, and stick it back on there. But you'll notice it's got this big hole, so you can get in there and you can clean it out, which is a little bit different from a regular beer keg. Most regular standard beer kegs have a 2-inch hole in the very top, and the 2-inch hole is really hard to get in and clean out really well or real effectively. So we like this larger hole, so it's a whole lot easier to get into. Now, the difference is that the ball lock keg has 2 ball locks on the outside, and they'll be marked in and out. And it has the same lid configuration. It falls, it comes right out. Now, lids are made differently. Some have a permanent pressure relief valve, which is on this one. And then some have a manual pressure relief valve, which is here. And if you pull this ring, it will relieve the pressure. You know, 6 of one, half dozen of the other. You know, and oh, by the way, if you don't have a manual pressure relief valve, all you have to do is push in on the detent on the inside. That's where the gas goes in. It'll relieve the pressure. So that's there for you. So let's put the ball lock aside. Oh, I wanted to show you something a little bit more. As a matter of fact, the difference between your ball lock and your pin lock connectors, and gray means gas. That's the gray connector. And that's the gray connector for the pin lock, and I'll show you why. And black is always liquid. So, and if you look on here on the black one, you'll see it's got 1, 2, 3 connectors. On the gray one, which is the gas, it has 1, 2 connectors. So they go on the pins, and they go on like so. All you do is push them down and turn. Push this one down and turn. And what that does is it presses in the detent, and it allows either gas to go in or it allows liquid to come out. Now, the difference with a ball lock keg, and our ball lock kegs are really unique because you'll have, all these do is they press down on top and click. And if you want to remove them, just grab it, lift up the sleeve, and it releases. Now be very cautious, because you can put a gas connector, if you try, it takes a little bit of pressure, but you can put it on the out of a ball lock keg and it'll be stuck for quite a while. It'll take a hammer, 4-men and a boy, and a chisel to get it off, but it'll come off. You may break it, but it'll come off. So just be real careful that you put the gas on the in and you put the liquid on the out. You can't do that with a pin lock. A pin lock is made that way. So let's put those down. And maybe that's why some people prefer the pin locks over the ball locks. But both kegs work exactly the same way. So let's get into the anatomy of these kegs. And what you'll find, there we go, what you're going to find, and this is a pin lock. If you screw that off, inside there'll be a small spring with a small poppet valve on top. And that's what they call it a poppet valve. And when you depress that, that allows gas or liquid to escape through the small hole. This is a ball lock, and they're made exactly the same way, but they just look a little bit different. But they both work extremely well. Now, one other thing that they've done is there's a difference in the threads. So if you've got a pin lock keg and you try to put a ball lock connector on it, it may or may not fit depending on who made that keg and where it came from. So you got to make sure you get the right one. So, and they come in a couple of different sizes. All right, now here's how the keg works. We fill the keg up and we push pressure in the in line, and that's the gas line. And if you reach inside, you'll feel that there's a small tube, and I'll show you that in a second. But there's a small tube, and it's probably about that long. And it just sticks inside. On the other side, we have a tube that goes all the way to the bottom of the keg. That's called the dip tube. In the dip tube, the pressure starts from the top, and you fill it with CO2, excuse me, and it pushes down on that beer or that wine or whatever you've got in here. And as it pushes down, it forces it into that dip tube, and that pushes it straight up, and it comes out the outline. So that's how the keg works. The keg it's really ingenious, because all it is a pressure vessel to move liquid from one location to another, meaning from a keg into a glass. That's all it is. Now what you'll need for a pin lock, and I've got one here, I've got this, you'll see the socket that I have, and this socket's been cut on a couple different places so it'll fit either the 2-pin or the 3-pin, which is on a pin lock keg. And then you'll just need to find a regular socket that'll fit around the outside of a ball lock, and that looks like about a 5/8, maybe a 7/8, I'm not sure. But if you'll find one, if you got a socket set, it'll fit over there. It's a deep well socket. Whoop, that'll come off. All right. So we'll place this on here, and we're going to take off the gas one first. And there we go. We just loosened it, screw it off, and that gas tube comes out. Now that gas tube is something that you'd want to clean, and there's a small recess in here that this thing fits into, and there's a small gasket inside. And that's all there is to it. Comes apart. So it's there, it's available for cleaning, and then you'll put it back together the same way you took it apart. So that's the gas in. We'll screw that back on, and then we're going to put our wrench back on it. We're going to give it a snug. Now you don't want to tighten this too tight. You just want to snug it, because it's got a gasket in there. Now let's go over here to our, there we go. We'll go to our liquid, break that loose. Now when we remove the liquid line, remember it has that dip tube. And that dip tube is extremely long. It goes all the way down to the bottom of the keg, so all of your liquid will go up this tube and come out the very top. And this also comes apart in the same manner, in the same fashion as the gas line, but you have to pull it apart. This one I'm leaving together because I like it the way it is, and it's working well now, so there's nothing wrong with it. You can replace the gaskets or the O-rings that go around the outside, and that's right around the outside of the poppet valve itself. Every once in a while it'll require a replacement ring, but in most cases they last for an indefinite period of time. So you normally shouldn't have any problem with them. The only time that they'll leak is when they get really, really old or they get damaged. And the easiest way to tell if they're leaking or not is once you get it all put back together and in place. There we go, nice and snug. Is once you get it all back together in place, nice and snug, you put, that's the lid. Oh, I must have that gasket crooked. I do. No, I got, yeah, that's the right lid. Yeah. There we go. Once I got that gasket, then that closes and that seals up. So, that's how you take those apart and put those back together. Now, when you're going to test it, I've got Star San all mixed up inside my Windex, old Windex bottle. You'll notice when I shake it, it really suds up really well. It's also an excellent to use to check if you got a leak. So hook up everything and then spray the poppet. And you'll notice if you see bubbles, because this will bubble, if you see bubbles, you know you've got a slight leak. Oh, that's it. Now you know the anatomy of a keg, a ball lock keg and a pin keg, pin lock keg and a ball lock keg. They both work exactly the same way. The only differences between them are the poppets at the very top. So one's not any better than the other. I have both here because we service the community and we've got two different personalities, I guess. People like pin locks over ball lock. Doesn't matter to me. They both work extremely well. So without further ado, listen, share us with your friends, like us on Facebook, you know the routine, and you know the phone number. If you got a question, give us a call. Please share us with your friends. We like nothing more than to answer questions or to engage with the community of brewers, distillers, winemakers. We're here to serve you, so if you don't take advantage of us, I'll just sit back here behind the computer and do some Google searching. So until next time, happy brewing and happy distilling.